This is Client 1's training program. In order to create a training program for my client, certain questionnaires were carried out in order to gather as much information as possible in relation to the development of the training program. Firstly, a PAR-Q was carried out. This aids in making sure training sessions are safe to carry out for the individual. This is a pre-activity readiness questionnaire which is completed prior to the training program to inform the instructor of the client's background. Secondly, a lifestyle questionnaire is then carried out which includes questions related to the client's lifestyle in general. For example, questions relating to the client's alcohol consumption and smoking status are asked, and questions concerning their occupation, sleep, diet, and level of physical activity are also asked. This particular questionnaire is carried out to get an idea of what sort of person the client is and what their lifestyle is in relation to how much physical activity they can carry out. Lastly, a barriers questionnaire is carried out to give the instructor an idea of what barriers prevent the client from taking part in physical activity, and if so, how much time is taken up by these barriers. An example from my client shows that their barrier to participating in physical activity includes family commitments. Every individual has a varying amount of barriers which prevents them from taking part in physical activity, some more than others. This could include money, transport, provision, access, disability, and many more. All three questionnaires are carried out prior to the training program so the instructor can gain an idea of what sessions to carry out and how often to carry them out based on the client's background and barriers to participation. Moving on, we have the goals. So after the questionnaires have been carried out, it is then time to establish the client's goals. In other terms, establish targets of what the client wishes to achieve at the end of the 6-week training program. For example, improved aerobic endurance, improved strength, etc. Goals can be set by carrying out tests on the relevant components of fitness. Tests such as the Cooper Run, which aims to improve aerobic endurance, the hand grip test, which aims to improve strength, and the sit and reach test, which looks at flexibility, are all carried out. This is done to see the client's strengths and weaknesses and to prioritise the weakness so that both the client and instructor think the client should focus on. Once the tests have been carried out and the main weakness is prioritised, goals can then be set. These goals must be agreed by both the instructor and the client as they will both be working together to achieve these goals. My client's prioritised weakness was their aerobic endurance. This was due to their poor performance on the Cooper Run test. The Cooper Run is a 12-minute continuous run in which the client has to run around a 330-metre area for 12 minutes, and the number of laps is then recorded. This test is primarily focused on aerobic endurance, which is best suited to the goals of the performer. I will not be comparing my client's data to normative data, as I want them to focus on improving their own fitness levels as opposed to trying to work towards fitness levels that might be unrealistic to reach. If the data is too high for the client's fitness levels, then it may put them off trying to improve their aerobic endurance as a whole if they think their goal is unobtainable. Therefore, normative data will not be used in this training program. So moving on, we have targets. So based on the information that I've retrieved, the client will complete a 6-week training program that will consist of 3 sessions per week. This is because the client is already carrying out 4 gym sessions per week, therefore overloading them with more than 4 sessions per week will be too much for the body to handle and will not allow for sufficient recovery for both the muscular and the cardiovascular system. If sufficient recovery time isn't allowed, then adaptations in both the muscular and cardiovascular system won't take place and injury is more likely to occur as a result of overtraining. Therefore, 3 sessions is a suitable number to carry out per week. Furthermore, the client is focusing on aerobic endurance, therefore recovery time will be quicker than if they were carrying out strength training. This is due to the intensity levels being lower, therefore being able to cope with more than 2 sessions per week. So, a warm-up is implemented before an activity is carried out to increase heart rate. This is so the heart is prepared for the activity that is about to follow. A warm-up is also carried out to increase the elasticity of the muscles so that during the main activity, the muscles aren't strained and not pulled to cause damage and injury. This leads on to the point that a warm-up aids in the prevention of injury by preparing the muscles for certain movements that are going to be carried out through dynamic stretching. Not only does a warm-up help us physically, but it does also help us mentally, by mentally preparing us for the main activity we're going to be taking part in. A warm-up can also help by controlling anxiety levels or getting motivated for the activity. Moving on to a cool-down. This is carried out after the main activity has been carried out to return the heart rate back to normal resting levels. It helps remove any waste products that are built up during exercise, for example lactic acid. It also aids in returning the muscles back to their original length if they were stretched during the activity. The cool down keeps the capillaries dilated to aid in the venous return of the blood back to the heart, And last but not least, a cool down prevents the risk of DOMS developing, which can be caused by a build-up of lactic acid. So moving on to the training program itself. Before every session is carried out, a warm-up will be carried out, and this will consist of a pulse raiser, which will start off with a walk and then moving to a light jog on the treadmill for 5 minutes. For this, we want to achieve an RPE scale of 5. So by this I mean there's a scale of 1 to 10, an RPE scale of how hard the performer feels they are working, and they want to achieve a level 5, which is in the middle. This will then be followed by dynamic stretching, which will have the main focus on the lower body. So for example, hamstring sweeps, lunges, opening and closing the gait, and quadricep raises will all be carried out. So week 1 and 2 will consist of the same training program. So Monday will be a rest day, which can consist of just some stretching, lower body stretches. On Tuesday, a 20-minute continuous run on the field will be carried out. Continuous training involves carrying out physical activity without rest intervals. This type of training is good for aerobic endurance as it targets the cardiovascular system, as you're constantly having to get a good supply of oxygen to the working muscles, and you're constantly making your heart work. Therefore, you're increasing the muscle size over time, the cardiac muscle size, over time, so that more forceful contractions can take place. This means that more blood is being injected per beat and more oxygen is reaching the working muscles, therefore reducing fatigue and improving aerobic endurance. The performer will be working at 60% of their maximum heart rate, as working at this level improves basic endurance and it is also fat burning. Working harder will lead to anaerobic work, which won't be beneficial for the athlete in terms of their goals. They have the potential to work around 70% of their maximum heart rate, but as it's the first session, we'll start off at the lower end. Wednesday is a rest day, and Thursday will consist of a 20-minute fartlek training session on the treadmill. Fartlek training involves change in speed. This adds variance and will prevent the performer becoming tedious, therefore maintaining motivation levels. As the performer's main sport is football, this type of training suits well to the sport as it involves speed play throughout the whole game, therefore making the training more applicable. So the performer is going to walk for 2 minutes at 5.5 kilometers at an incline level of 1, which will be working at 30% of their maximum heart rate. They will then jog for 2.5 minutes at 9 kilometers, which will involve working at 60% of their maximum heart rate, and they will then sprint for 30 seconds at 12 kilometers, which will be targeting their anaerobic endurance, anaerobic systems, working at 85% of their maximum heart rate. This will then be repeated 4 times. Friday is then their next rest day, which will be followed by, on Saturday, a 20-minute interval training session on the bike. Interval training involves rest periods in between bouts of exercise. This also adds variation and prevents the performer becoming tedious as it changes things up and introduces a new way of exercising. So the performer will do 4 minutes of work at around 70 RPM, and this will be followed by a 1-minute rest. And this process will be repeated at 4 times. So this should be getting the performer to work around 60% of their maximum heart rate. And last but not least, Sunday will be a rest day. So moving on to week 3 and 4, the same process follows. Monday is a rest day, which involves stretching. Tuesday will then progress the session to a 30-minute continuous session, and this will be changed to be carried out on a road surface. So we'll continue carrying out continuous training as maintaining a good workout for the heart, so cardiovascular adaptations can be met. Also, carrying out the same routine each week makes the performer feel more comfortable as they're aware of what they're doing each session, so therefore they'll be more motivated to do it and more comfortable. And furthermore, carrying out similar sessions will allow the performer to see where they're at and can see if any improvements have been made prior to the sessions last week. So Wednesday is their second rest day, and on Thursday we will progress the fartlek training session to 30 minutes on a cross trainer. So the performer will walk for 2 minutes at 6 kilometers, which will be progressing the intensity to 35% of their maximum heart rate. They will then be jogging for 3 minutes and a quarter at 9.5 kilometers, which will be working about 65% of the maximum heart rate. And then lastly, they'll be sprinting for 45 seconds at 13 kilometers, which will be looking at about 90% of their maximum heart rate. And this will be repeated 5 times. And as you can see, we've increased the session time, increased the intensity, their maximum heart rate and increase the level of speed they're working at, and also increase the times at which they're jogging and sprinting for. Friday is a rest day, which will then be followed by Saturday, which consists of a 30-minute interval training session on the treadmill, again changing things up as to what terrain they're doing it on. And this will involve 5¼ minutes of work and then 45 seconds of rest. And this will be repeated 5 times. And they'll be working at around I'd say 9.5 kilometers, and then their rest will just be walking at probably about 3.5 kilometers. And so this should target them as working at 65% of the maximum heart rate. Sunday is then a rest day, and then this will be repeated for weeks 3 and 4. So moving on lastly to weeks 5 and 6, Monday's a rest day, followed by Tuesday, which is a 40-minute continuous training session of running on a treadmill. So again, progressing the training program by working 10 minutes longer and changing the terrain at which they're working on. Wednesday is again a rest day, and then Thursday will be a 40-minute fartlek training session on the field. So again, we've upped the timing of which they're doing it for, and also up the timings of the rate that they're jogging at and the rate they're sprinting at, and also the intensity. So as you can see here, they'll be walking for 2 minutes at 7 kilometers, working at 40% of their maximum heart rate. They'll be jogging for 5 minutes at 10 kilometers, which is 70% of their maximum heart rate, and they'll also be sprinting for 1 minute at 14 kilometers, which works them at about 95% of their maximum heart rate. And this will be repeated 5 times. So you're more likely to get the adaptations because you're progressing the training program every 2 weeks in regards to the times and intensities, making the goals more achievable. So Friday we've then got a rest day. Saturday will then take place regarding a 40-minute interval training session on a curve machine. They'll be doing 7.5 minutes of work and then 30 seconds of rest, and this will be repeated 5 times, and they'll be working at about 70% of their maximum heart rate, which is targeting the aerobic system. Sunday will be their last rest day, and that will be carried out weeks 5 and 6. So lastly here we've got the review. So in order to see adaptations taking place in relation to the client's cardiovascular and muscular system, reviewing the client 3 weeks into the training program and at the end of the 6 weeks will play an important part in seeing if fitness levels have improved. This can be done by carrying out the Cooper run again and seeing if the client can improve on their score by achieving an increased number of laps around the track. If a better score is achieved at these retests, then we know that adaptations are working and the training program is aiding in achieving the client's goals. It is important to carry out a retest in 3 weeks because if no change in score is seen, then it still gives the instructor time to alter the training program so that adaptations can be seen. And this can be done by making the training program more demanding and placing more pressure on the cardiovascular and the muscular system for the client. I will then carry out 2 retests, so 1 at 3 weeks and 1 at 6 weeks, and this will be done by carrying out the Cooper run again, see where my client is at in relation to their goals and whether more progress needs to be made or whether they're on target.